All right, the Huskers may have the week off, but no siree. Behind the Point Spread takes no time off, as this is week number 7 as we get ready for a big week in college football, huge week in college football. I know a lot of people plan weddings this week. Never plan a wedding during the fall. You just don't do something like that, right? Saturdays and Sundays are for football. You get married in the winter, you get married in the spring, you get married in the summer. If you're getting married this weekend, shame on you. You're depriving your guest of watching some really good college football. We got a lot to talk about tonight, but I do want to keep you posted on how you can interact with this show. Of course, you can always leave comments in the comment section if you're watching on Facebook, on YouTube, or I found out tonight, Twitch. Yes, we have a Twitch channel. I don't know why I have a Twitch channel. I just do. So we broadcast on Twitch. So if you want to leave comments, the best place to do that is in the comment section if you have a question or if you have a comment. Or if you want to join the show, you can always call 402-543-5556. That's 402-543-5556. 556. We have a lot of games to get to tonight, but let's start off with a little banter and bring in our Vegas insider, Mr. Scott Spreitzer. And down below, member of the original Pipeline. I think he actually named the Pipeline. The smartest man we'll ever know, Dr. Rob Zatechka. Hello, Doc.
How are you guys doing?
And you're asking the question, is there a baseball game on right now? It's like Scott's like getting the itch like a meth head or a crack addict because he's like, I can't believe I have to do a 45-minute show with you guys with baseball games going on right now.
Got the Royals and Yankees going.
And we got the Padres and the Dodgers starting in a few minutes. So it's going to be, if you see me doing this, there's nobody behind me threatening me. I'm just looking at the games. But wanted to mention also, we got Vegas Golden Knights kicking off their season tonight. So fortunately, we'll be done by the time the VJK rolls around hosting the Colorado Avalanche.
So we were talking in the green room before we got started, and I did not know this, but one of the most famous landmarks in Las Vegas came down this morning, right? The Tropicana is no more?
Tropicana is no more, making way for the Athletics' new baseball stadium on the Strip. And you had John Fisher from the Oakland A's, the owner, now the Sacramento A's, soon to be, I guess you could call them the Sacramento A's of Las Vegas for a couple of years. But he was on the site doing a couple of speeches. It was 2:30 in the morning Pacific time, perfect Vegas style, fireworks for 5 minutes and then boom.
And hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Between the Raiders and the A's, is there any shared ownership or connection there?
Not that I know of.
Okay. It seems kind of interesting that everybody from Oakland's going to Vegas. On the flip side,
they could have kept the Raiders.
Yeah. If I'm a pro sports team, it's sort of one of those, why would you not want to be in Las Vegas?
And right on the Strip, the corner of Tropicana and Vegas Boulevard, that's where the stadium is going to be built. It's going to be a roof, a retractable roof and all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to worry about the desert heat. The Oakland A's.
So you don't have to worry about the rain.
Yeah, the rain, the once a year rain. It's funny that you mentioned that because I do believe the minor league baseball team out here has been rained out like 5 times in 25 years. It's crazy. But, it's in 1996, and I've been out here since 84. In 1996, Oakland had, guess what, a problem with their stadium, the A's, at the start of the season. So they were having to do a bunch of stuff to the stadium. And I believe it was the first home series, like 8 games. They played at Cashman Field, AAA Park in Las Vegas. First 8 games of the regular season, sold out every night. They've been talking about moving the A's to Las Vegas for 28 years. It started back then. Sell out every night. Now, a sellout at Cashman went like 12,000 people, which is about 3 times what they get for the Oakland A's.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oakland. And you don't have to wear a bulletproof vest afterwards to get home. So excuse me, sorry, Oakland, but it's one of those. I used to say all the time, Fisher ought to have first 2,000 fans get a bulletproof vest, And anyway, we're getting off on another tangent here, but it was interesting.
I was going to ask you this: how many classic hotels have you watched be imploded in Las Vegas?
I can't even count. The Aladdin, Landmark, the Dunes around 20 years ago. Just at least 6 or 7. The Sands was used in Con Air. When they imploded the Sands, it was used in the movie Con Air. When they imploded the Dunes, it was used at the very end of the movie Casino, where they started talking about we destroyed everything that's good, and now we got kids and their families coming in, which ended after a couple of years. But at least 7 or 8 hotels, and Vegas just always renews itself, like it or not. I will say this. I got one quick story about the Tropicana. And there's a lot of stories about the Tropicana because that was one of the most connected places in Vegas when I first got here. So 1980, 4 years before I moved here, I was 13. And I spent the entire summer between school years in Las Vegas. My older brother, who's 14 years older than me, he's now retired. He was collection manager in his late 20s at the Tropicana Hotel. And so I'm spending, part of my summer there hanging out in his office and all that kind of stuff and just loving Las Vegas, seeing all the behind the scenes kind of stuff. So I don't know, I'd been there for maybe 2 or 3 days. And all of a sudden my brother he's talking to somebody outside of his office and he goes, "Hey, I want you to meet my brother." So here comes this little old man, he had to be close to 80 years old back then, real thick New York accent. And my brother goes, "This is my little brother, Scott. Scott, this is Luigi Piccone." I'm like, "Oh, nice to meet you, Mr. Piccone." So this guy, and I'm not going to try to do this old man New York Italian accent, but he hands me his business card. He goes, "Hey, any brother of Mark's, Mark's a son to me. You're a son to me too." 13 years old, hands me a business card. And he goes, "How old are you?" I go, 13. And he goes, "All right, well, here's my card. If you need a woman or a room, just let me know while you're here." I swear. It was like Las Vegas baptism right then and there. And then my brother's like, "What are you doing, Luigi? Come on." So this guy was like some big shot at the Trop. He's sure he's been gone for a long, long time, but there's so many unbelievable stories about the Trop. My aunt and uncle, who are long since gone from Omaha, they grew up with the Gone family, Jackie Gone.
Yep.
Came out here and opened up the El Cortez. There's an old picture. I got to find it somewhere and post it on social media, old black and white picture. They used to travel a lot. They're sitting on the corner of Trop and Vegas Boulevard, probably about 1954, black and white photo with a trailer behind their car, sitting on the corner with Jackie Gone, my Aunt Dode, my Uncle Bob, the Duffys. And I got to find that photo because how cool is that to have a family connection, and I mean a real family connection, not the colorful ones, sitting on the corner of Trop and Vegas Boulevard before they even built the Tropicana.
Wow. And now it's good. And now it's gone. It's going to be a baseball stadium.
Yeah, now it'll be the Oakland A's baseball stadium.
Brian says, crazy how when we were kids, the idea of a pro franchise in Las Vegas was considered beyond taboo, and now they can't get there quick enough. I mean, the NBA is going to be next, right?
Yeah, they've already located the land that they're going to build the NBA arena on, which means like 8 arenas that hold 15,000 or more. That'll be all within about 6 miles of each other. And but anyway, yeah, LeBron James wants to bring the NBA here, so he's behind it, and a few other big names. And they've already got the land, and I would say within 5 years, there will be an NBA team in Las Vegas. I'm hoping it's going to be a startup born here in Vegas like the Golden Knights, not a team they bring in from somewhere else. I don't care about the Oakland A's. I couldn't care less. I don't like the Raiders. I've never been a Raider fan, but I love to be able to go 41 times a year to see Major League Baseball, to see Shohei Ohtani. Mike Trout's probably going to be retired by then, but to see teams that I grew up watching and some of these players, I'm all for that. Raiders are ridiculous. They charge like, $400 to sit top row in a 65,000 seat arena because they get people coming from out of town, that'll come here and fill half the stadium. And then there's a bunch of Raider fans still come down from Oakland, still come from LA, and they'll buy tickets too. But I can't wait till baseball arrives, guys.
How far a drive is that from kind of like that San Fran, Oakland area to Vegas?
12 hours, roughly.
Ooh.
How far is it from LA?
4.5.
That's it?
Yeah, 4.5 on a good day,
Wow.
5.5 on a heavy traffic day. We go down to Orange County quite a bit, where we hang out at Laguna Beach, Newport Beach in the summertime. And it's a 4-hour drive. We leave at like 7 in the morning.
Stye's stomping grounds.
What's that?
That's Brendan Stye's stomping grounds.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're down there all the time.
No, I mean, I look at Vegas and I think, just the sheer volume of people that move through that place on a regular basis. I guess, so at the hospital I work at, there's a ton of Chiefs fans. It's Omaha, Nebraska. You're either a Chiefs fan, Denver fan,
Packers fan,
and then you got
Bears
kind
fan,
of this
Vikings
smattering
fan.
of like Packer, Viking, Bears fans. But for the most part, we're closest to Kansas City, so there is a ton of Chiefs fans.
Sure.
I would probably say the vast majority of the Chiefs fans I know, when they want to go watch the Chiefs play football, they go to Vegas. to watch them play the Raiders.
Well, that's the rivalry too, right? I mean, the Raiders and Chiefs are one of those big rivals. So
they are, but I mean, it's just if you're going to make
because people like to gamble, Rob. They like to play crap.
They
like to play blackjack.
They like the gambling, but I mean, if you're going to take a road trip, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go watch my team play. Why not go to Vegas?
Yeah,
because you can go to the game, and guess what? There's 20 other things to do that you can't do in Kansas City.
All within walking distance, basically. And,
yeah, it's all right there. It's great.
Where the Raiders play Allegiant Stadium is, I mean, you can walk from there to where the Oakland A's will be playing. You know,
and I'm one of those guys. I don't gamble at all. I'm very pro gambling.
You gamble every day. You gamble with people's lives.
I hope that's not a gamble.
It's all paperwork.
It's all paperwork.
But it's one of those things that when it comes from a sporting event standpoint, I don't gamble at all, and I love Vegas.
Yeah,
it's there is 30 things to do from a eating standpoint. Okay, you can find anything there.
Yeah.
It's great.
My co-host on the morning is in Vegas right now, and they're eating at the Caesars buffet, which I heard was $134 a head.
Worth it. Worth it. I'm not saying if you live here, you go there every month, but if you're coming from out of town, you eat. It was at the Bacchanal or something like that.
Okay.
You eat at that buffet. And you spend the money, and you will not be sorry you spent the money.
It's a buffet, and you're putting like oysters on a buffet. I don't get that.
Man, we got to get you out here, and I'll take you there. I'll take you there on me just to get you out here.
I want to go to the Sphere. I want to go to the Sphere. Hey, you're going to hear Scott Spreitzer talk a lot tonight, and if you want to work with Scott directly, you can text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022. And get a free $60 trial of the premium member picks from Scott. Again, that's a free $60 trial of the premium member picks from Scott by texting the word Doc Talk to the number 29022. Or you can visit docsports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left hand of the website. These are the games we're going to be talking about tonight. We got one in the National Football League, a big one coming up on Monday. So this is a Monday night football game. The Buffalo Bills taking on the New York Jets. And then our college games tonight. Iowa State is at West Virginia. Huge game in the Big 12. Ole Miss against LSU. Big playoff implications here. We go to the Big 10 where Penn State's going to visit USC. And, of course, Texas and Oklahoma. I'm not calling it the Red River Shootout. To me, it's always been the Red River Rivalry. To me, it's always been the Red River Shootout. So that's what we're going to call it, damn it. And don't forget, this is an interactive show. You can leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, or you can give us a call at 543. That's 402-543-5556. I'm losing my voice. There, going down the wrong pipe. Before we get started, Alex has got a question. I want to bring this in. Hey, guys, excited for the show as always. Thank you, Alex. We appreciate you watching. About 600 people watching right now, and it keeps growing. Could you ask Scott how he factors in special teams into his predictions? We all know how good Beamer ball was. Huskers, not so much. Ha, ha, ha. So how do you factor in special teams?
Yeah, you do have to a little bit if it's, way off the norm. And Beamer ball was way off the norm. Nebraska the other way, as your guy just said, way off the norm when it comes to being able to set up for field goals. It's scary to watch Nebraska. And I think you got to, if you expect a close game, I mean, you do have the situation where Nebraska finally won a one-score game, but just take all that out of the mix, the bad results in one-score games. And you still got to think, if I think this is a one-score game and I need a field goal, how can I back Nebraska to cover that point spread until they prove they can do it week in, week out? But Beamer, yeah, I factored it in. The sports books really didn't do it. It's hard to quantify special teams. And I'll tell you another one out here in Vegas. You've got a coach who, if you saw against Syracuse, the game they lost UNLV, they put their speed burners, their fastest guys, their first string wide receivers as the guys rushing the punter. And they blocked 2 punts against Syracuse, 1 for a touchdown. And so I do think that has to be factored in your handicapping. I don't think the books quantify it. I don't think they know how. It's one of those things where, this team's got great special teams. This teams are bad, but I just think it all kind of comes into the mix. It's a great question. For me, I do look into it. If I've got to lay a certain amount of points and I feel a little uncomfortable but I like laying it, but a little uncomfortable, so it's not a big play. And then I start thinking, boy, I might need a field goal along the way. It makes you think twice, and it makes you adjust your plays, at least as far as, me as a bettor is concerned, rather than setting point spreads behind the counter like the sportsbook directors do.
So Rob is drinking beer. People are asking. Travis may be sipping bourbon or apple juice. Not sure. It is a double shot of Angel's Envy. I'm wearing a Toppling Goliath t-shirt. What are you drinking there? You're drinking Dew Claw? Not White Claw, Dew Claw.
Dew Claw. Believe it or not, this is a New Jersey beer.
Wow. Going with the New Jersey beer. All right.
Well, okay. So Jason Werner, who supplied us with insane,
which I haven't
about
seen
3
any
or
of
4 guys who've supplied us with insane amounts of beer over the years. So Jason's he's like one of the core guys who gives us beer. But anyway, yeah. So it's a New Jersey beer. So this is their Super Freak.
Oh, Super Freak. Super Freak.
So coconut, caramel, chocolate, brown ale.
Oh, that sounds like shit, is what it sounds like.
Oh my God, it is so tasty. Like, this is not what I would normally drink, but it's dessert in a can.
All right, let's dive into our first game. We're going to the National Football League. This is actually a Monday night game, and this game got a lot more intriguing. It's Buffalo taking on the Jets. Robert Saleh fired yesterday. Aaron Rodgers had a bad game last week. He's playing like a 40-year-old quarterback. You could make the argument that this week, Scott, is so important for Aaron Rodgers.
He's playing like a 40-year-old quarterback, and we're not talking about a Tom Brady 40-year-old quarterback.
No.
He's playing like a guy that ought to be in the adult league over 40 or something out here in Vegas. But it's been that bad. They should have won against Minnesota in London last weekend, and he throws 3 picks, 1 for a pick 6. Then they're inside the 10-yard line, down 6. Late in the game, he throws another pick. So it's Robert Saleh's fault. Well, here's what happened. The scoop out here, and maybe you guys have heard this too, I know it's buzzing around Las Vegas, is that Robert Saleh was he was Monday. He's prepping for the game this week. And Rodgers got a little rumor. This is what they're saying. Allegedly, he got the rumor that Saleh was going to fire Nathaniel Hackett. That's Aaron Rodgers' boy. Nathaniel Hackett's been terrible since he left Green Bay. He was horrible at Denver, and he's been bad with the Jets. Well, Rodgers goes to ownership, they're saying, and says, you're not firing Nathaniel Hackett. They fired Robert Saleh instead. Robert Saleh is a fantastic defensive coach. If he wants a job yesterday, he's going to get one as a DC. He's got a bad record. There's no doubt about it. I'm not a big fan of his as a head coach because of his offensive shortcomings. And he hires Nathaniel Hackett because of Aaron Rodgers, and we see what's going on. But the bottom line is, for this game, this Buffalo side was 3. It's now down to 2.5. Just told you about what the scoop was. Again, Hackett's not good. Aaron Rodgers is playing like more than a 40-year-old. He's been extremely prickly. Shocker, Aaron Rodgers, when things aren't going well. The Jets should have beaten Minnesota. What's that?
It's funny you say that because Game Dog just said Aaron's an insufferable prick. You said he's been a little pricky. He looks miserable. Not sure why he's still out there when he looks miserable.
Yeah, and it's funny.
I agree with Game Dog here, by the way.
Yeah, he does. He looks like a jerk. He looks like it'd be extremely tough to play for. There's the excuse going into last week where you say, okay, this guy's won. Well, he's won one Super Bowl, but he's won a lot of games, and winners don't like to be told how to win by losers. And the Jets are a loser. And okay, I get that, but you can't be a total prick. You can't be a jerk. And, when he showed up, Robert Saleh on the sideline, when Saleh was excited and went to give him a high five a couple of weeks ago, that was really weak, and the writing was on the wall. We probably should have predicted a Saleh firing within 2 weeks after that scene. But anyway, having said all of that, the defense is great. They're 6th in EPA allowed per play. And remember, EPA is points basically above adjustment. So, for instance, if an offense has the ball 1st and 10 at their own 30, they're going to have less of an EPA or a chance of scoring than if a 1st and 10 play comes from the opponent's 30. Well, defensively, you factor that in too. You flip things around a little bit, and you've got a New York Jets defense that's 6th in that category, and they're 5th highest in pressure rate, talking about the New York Jets. Anyway, what's got them thus far has been the fact that they haven't been able to move the ball when it comes to quarterbacking, passing. They got a great running back on this team. Anyway, having said that, not crazy about the Bills. I mean, they've beaten, teams they should have beaten. Josh Allen's ankle's probable, got him listed as probable. I'm going to lean towards the Buffalo Bills. Talking about this on Wednesday when we don't see this game for 5 days makes it impossible for me unless I really like a game to jump in. But it's going to be the Bills or nothing for me on Monday night. The only caveat is a lot of times you'll see professional teams getting that immediate bounce for a game when there's a coaching change. Not sure I'm going to factor that into this one this week, but the offense has got to be better.
How does the whole coaching change factor in? Because when I'm reading up on this game, that's the thing that kept coming up time and time again was the whole, new coach bounce or coach firing bounce. Has that really been that big of a benefit for teams that are fired a coach?
Maybe that much. And for 1 week. In the NHL, telling you right now, the NHL started this week. And I just want to let people know that are watching this for their own betting purposes. When an NHL team fires their coach, you jump on that team until they lose. It's as simple as that. It's been really good in the NHL. I've had 6-0 runs, 4-0 runs, 5-0 runs. And it, it doesn't mean you go out there and bet them, blindly with a ton of money, but you should not bet the other side when they're in that first game and you just keep riding it out. It's not that crazy of a stat or whatever when it comes to the NFL, but it does matter. They do tend to play some of their best football for one game when that coach gets fired and they get that bump.
All right, let's jump into college football. We're going to the Big 12. This would be a primetime game on Fox on Saturday. Iowa State, probably the team to beat in the Big 12 right now, going to West Virginia. The Mountaineers with a big win last week. This game has playoff implications, especially for the Cyclones. Yes, we're talking about Iowa State in the playoff. And I think this could be a wild game. And this has a good one written all over it, as Iowa State right now a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, 3. The total sitting around 53 or thereabouts, and they've been as high as 4 in a couple of books, Iowa State, but most shops have been holding around 3. Pretty split. I was checking this about an hour before we started the show, and it's pretty split down the middle as far as tickets written. I normally like teams that run the ball well and play solid defense. Kind of that's Iowa State, but a little concerned because that ground game was stifled by Iowa, was stifled by North Dakota. They gained under 90 yards on the ground in each of those 2 games. The good news is that Beck was at his best in those 2 games. West Virginia has played the tougher schedule. They just clocked Oklahoma State and Stillwater off a bye. They outgained the Cowboys 389-34 on the ground, which is crazy. But they've lost 2 games this year. Look who they've lost to. Pitt, 5-0, straight up and against the spread. West Virginia led by 10 with 3.5 minutes to go. They lose to Pitt. They lost to Penn State, 5-0. So the 2 games they've lost have gone against teams that are 10-0 right now on the season. I make the neutral site number Iowa State 6. It's in Morgantown. The total has gone from 51 to 53. And I got to tell you, even with that adjustment on the total, I still think it's a little bit too short. So if I'm going to jump in on this game, I'm playing the over in the Mountaineers Iowa State Cyclones contest. Check on the weather as you get closer to the game, but that's what I'd look to do here.
The interesting part is you mentioned the running game for Iowa State. I think they finally found a running back in Jalen Jackson, right? They had kind of they started with Abu Sama, and they wanted to get him carries. He wasn't producing. Jalen Jackson has been producing the last couple of games, had a huge game last week against Baylor, and they've got incredible receivers. I mean, Jalen Knowles is incredible. So it'll be an interesting game. We were talking on my radio show earlier this week. Are night games in Morgantown safe? We think those should be like banned. No night games in Morgantown. You can't trust the people of West Virginia at night.
Okay, what's happened in Morgantown at night other than everybody's having a good time?
We're stereotyping, Rob. We're stereotyping. They're setting couches on fire, all sorts of stuff. We stereotype is what we're doing.
They can move them out here like we do with Oakland, so,
All right, this next one in the SEC is going to be...
Oh, wait a second. Hold on.
Okay.
We haven't even talked about Ben Brahmer yet. Iowa State, tight end, nothing?
The tight ends have not been active yet, Rob. I'm telling you, the tight ends at Iowa State, and Iowa State's got a great tight end, Rob.
I think he's still leading Iowa State in receptions and yardage.
I don't think yardage, but Knoll, I think, leads him in yardage, maybe receptions, but the tight ends have not been as active this year as I think a lot of people thought were going to be for Iowa State. But Rocco Beck's a hell of a quarterback. He's only a sophomore.
He's not betting. All things are good.
Yeah, all things are good. All things are good. They're taking that to court. They're suing the Iowa DCI. I mean, they were entrapped. At least that's what they say.
I look at that and I'm going, okay. They talk about he was involved in 400 bets and he bet a total of $700. Oh my gosh! Stop the presses. He's betting $1.50 a game or a parlay. He's not doing that for any nefarious individuals who are coming up to him like they did James Conn of the Gambler. It's not one of those situations.
Yeah,
see, 10 years from now, we're all going to look back on this, and it's going to be sort of like when the Penn State guys were selling bowl game sweatshirts for tattoos.
No, that was Ohio State.
Ohio State guys were selling sweatshirts for tattoos, and then like a week later the whole Penn State thing broke, and everybody's like, wait, we were mad about what?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to the SEC. This is another playoff implication game. Ole Miss, of course, already has one loss on the year. LSU has struggled at times, but getting a lot better. A 6:30 game on ABC. The Tigers at home, a 3.5-point favorite over the Rebs.
And just a heads up on there, Ole Miss laying points here. The actual
Where'd Rob go?
I don't know where Rob went. He got ticked off.
I'm still here.
I lost your camera, man.
I got technical difficulties.
Yeah, you did. You can turn your camera on, man.
Let me. I'm gonna get it real while we're talking here. I mean, everybody can see it's a live one here, so I'm gonna look real quick to see where that line is now on that game. Ole Miss still. I think we just got a mistake on the line there.
It's Ole Miss at 3.5.
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure because they were down to 3 in a couple of books today, but they're still 3.5 Ole Miss, and that total's dropped a couple of points down to 63.5. And you wouldn't know that. That was just in the last couple of hours about the total. But Ole Miss has been the favorite all week, and they were 2.5 in some books. Again, they're up to 3.5 now in most books. Ole Miss just took on top 25 power-rated teams in back-to-back weeks. Probably should be 2-0 in those games, but did lose to Kentucky. The win over South Carolina was impressive. The Gamecocks could do absolutely nothing against Ole Miss. And if you're into common opponents, look at what South Carolina did with LSU. Final score was 36-33. They scored 3 points in a 24-point loss to Ole Miss. And also, they gave up a lot of yardage on the ground at LSU in that game. And we're talking about 6 yards per pop is basically what South Carolina gained on the ground against the Tigers. Against the Rebels, 3.5 yards per carry. That was it. I think this Rebel defense is too strong. I actually like a mature situation right now with Lane Kiffin over what we've seen out of LSU and the coaching staff over the last couple of years in big games. So I think Ole Miss gets the job done here, guys. We're not going to see, I don't think, a 104-point outburst like last year's game, 55-49. And we've seen that total drop a little bit. I like Ole Miss by 7 in this one, and it's a huge game. You could, again, were we talking on the air or off the air about 12-team playoffs? I think that was off the air.
That was off the air.
Yeah, this is one of those games, though, where you lose a second game here. You can't lose another game the rest of the way if you're going to be in that final 12. So it's a big game for both teams. I think Ole Miss gets the win on the road, though.
Breaks my heart. I hate to see Brian Kelly lose. 402-543-5556.
Are you serious?
Let's go to the phones. That's where our good buddy Jim is. Jim, thanks for calling the show. What's up, Jim?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Okay, I'm changing my mind. I'm talking about special teams.
Okay.
There needs to be a change in how we do things, or is Ed Foley going to get fired? What do you guys think?
Well, I tell you what, Jim, and we talked about this on the podcast, which if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Rob and I talk about this on the podcast about Foley, about the special teams, and Rob seems to be in agreement. You want to take the human element out of it, but Nebraska special teams have not been great, and sometimes you have to make a change to improve the product, right? I mean, Scott Frost did it with Bill Bush.
And that's the thing that I look at.
And that's who we should have.
And I love, okay, Trav and I are big fans of Coach Bush, but this is one of those situations where it's when you look at this from like a win-loss standpoint, the impact's huge. And I look at this and I keep going back to the fact that I love Foley. I love the fact that you got a guy who has come in and has established great relationships locally with the high school coaches. And that's something that you've got to have, but it has not panned out on the field. You've got to have a really good special teams coach, and we haven't seen that yet. So it's one of those things. I don't see him lasting after this season. Do I see them making a change in season? It's not really Rule style historically, but it's one of those things where I do think you're going to see a change when it comes to this after the season ends.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate the phone call. If you want to make a phone call,
which actually, I'm sorry. So, Trev, I apologize for interrupting. Scott, we barely kind of touched on this at the start of the show. Special teams does not seem like something that really factors into this. I mean, when I look at the games, we just talked about the Ole Miss LSU game. When I'm going through my breakdown of that particular game, I'm looking at total offense, total defense. I'm looking at rush offense, pass offense. I'm looking at rush offense, rush defense. I mean, everybody, when they're doing their statistical breakdown of that particular game in terms of how people are betting on the Ole Miss LSU game, which, by the way, I mean, if you're going on just on paper, Ole Miss runs away with this. But nobody takes into account special teams. Why is that not a factor in betting like you would think it would be?
It's just over the years that I've been doing this, all the years I've been doing this, it's just not factored into the final score enough. There are teams that you'll see like, Team A is fantastic at punting the football and making their field goals, but it's like there's a couple of elites when it comes to special teams, a bunch of, tons of teams, dozens of teams that are all about the same, and then a couple of really poor teams in those areas. So it's not enough. It's not like you're going to get two teams facing each other. One's an elite special teams team, and the other team happens to be a really bad team when it comes to special teams. The head-to-head doesn't happen enough to really make it matter a whole lot. And it's factored into the equation when it comes to the point spread, but it's ever so small. It really is, because you spend your time looking at yards per play, whether it be rushing, passing, or on defense against those two categories. That's where I look the most, because there's so many teams that play at different tempos. You got some teams that want to run that, like in the NFL, Harbaugh wants to take that play clock down as far as he can. And then you got another team who wants to fire. They want to be up there rapid fire. They want to get that play off early in the clock. And so that's where you got to do yards per play and not worry too much about total yards gained. Look at yards per play. Look at some of those metrics about how teams fare on 1st and 10 rather than 2nd and 15 and things like that. And special teams is such a small equation, or part of the equation, that it really doesn't get talked about much. You got to be really bad or unbelievably good on special teams to have it being talked about much. That's like your guy, who asked that question, which was a good question. And he said Beamer ball, because how many special teams have we seen that have been at the level of Beamer ball since Beamer retired? It's been 25 years. We're still talking about Beamer ball when we talk about good special teams.
All right, let's dive into the Big Ten. We're going to go out to California. That's where Penn State's going to visit SC. SC shocked the hell out of me last week, losing at Minnesota. Maybe it wasn't a shock to you, Scott, but it was a shock to me. The Nittany Lions, I hope I got this line right, 5.5-point favorite with a 53.5 over-under on this.
Yeah, that line's 5 and 5.5. The total has come crashing down today to 50.5.
Wow.
In that neighborhood. I didn't have any action on the Minnesota USC game last week. I really didn't have any opinion whatsoever on that game, but they've got a young offensive line other than their center, and it's really showing at times. We've seen mistakes made up front. They've been able to run the football better. They have to be able to run the football better than they have. Bottom line, no doubt about it. The Trojans have got to be able to find a decent running game. Defensively, if you pop USC in the nose, they wilt. That's the old, I guess, stereotype when you think of the Pac-12. You bloody up their nose in the first quarter and they're soft. That's what they say. I'm not saying it always works that way, but that's what we're seeing out of USC this year. I mean, Minnesota hung around. They did what they do. Ground and pound, to steal the UFC term, and not only ground and pound, but then take time off the clock in between plays. USC can't win football games like that. Michigan and Minnesota ran and did what they wanted on the ground in the fourth quarter of those two games without a ton of resistance. We're seeing USC missing tackles in both of those games that cost them. That 65-yard run, whatever it was, out of Michigan when USC looked like they had the game won, there was missed tackles right up front after the handoff. They're 110th in turnovers committed. They're 97th in takeaways, and their offense hasn't been dynamic enough to make up for that. It's tough to do, obviously. So here comes Penn State. They want to ground and pound. They want to run the football. I think it's a bad opponent for USC. Penn State doesn't turn the football over. The defense is 4th against the run, 12th against the pass. They've got more sacks. Check it out. More sacks by Penn State than any other team in college football over the last 3 years. That's how good they've been at pressuring the quarterback. Here comes the big caveat. Penn State's played the 80th ranked strength of schedule. USC has played the number 4 strength of schedule. Also, outside of Ohio State in a few weeks, if Penn State can win this football game, I mean, they're that close to wrapping up a playoff spot. If you look at that back end schedule, the Buckeyes and not a whole lot else unless they got upset along the way. And guess what that means? This is a huge pivotal game for Penn State. What does James Franklin do in huge pivotal games at Penn State?
Chokes.
He has an issue. He loses or he underperforms. That scares me. Now, the offense is dragged for 2 straight weeks when you talk about Penn State. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say USC keeps this close within a field goal. I think they're going to find a way to keep it close.
So Game Dog asked this, and I'm going to bring up the time zone different, right? Because he says USC is a completely different team playing on the West Coast as opposed to playing in the Midwest. Always been that way for USC. Penn State will be in for a game on Saturday. So you're saying that Penn State's not used to going this far at this time of the season. Does that travel make a difference when you look at something like this?
I would want to ask Dr. Rob about that because he played the game and, you go somewhere where you're not used to. But I like Game Dog, by the way. Is he a handicapper and a bettor? I mean, he asks great questions, and these are
good questions.
Yeah, and I think he's right. I think USC gives them all they can handle this week and keeps this a very close game. But Doc Rob, I got to ask you. When you're a player, I think this is one of those things you can only get from a guy who played the game at a high level. When you're a player and you're going somewhere where you're not used to going, is it tough? I remember Nebraska playing at South Carolina 40 years ago. A very good Nebraska. All of a sudden, they're playing at South Carolina. It's a different atmosphere and a different.
It is, and I remember listening to that game on the radio, and it's just like trying as all hell because that South Carolina nearly pulled the upset.
Right.
The thing that I think about is, when we played, and this is 30 years ago.
God, you're old.
God, there's no love here. We took that into account. I mean, when you traveled, you would travel on a Friday. You would adjust your overall schedule by 1 or 2 hours to account for that time zone change. When we went out to UCLA, they would bank that into the schedule where you'd get up at 4:35 a.m. and you would eat breakfast right then. Lunch was at 10 a.m. Dinner was at 4 in the afternoon. You would plan that stuff out to try and account for that schedule so it wouldn't have as much of an effect. And that's one of those things where now I have a lot of trouble thinking teams aren't figuring this stuff out. If I'm Penn State, as long as it doesn't affect things academically too much, this is a Thursday night road trip. If I'm the AD, if I'm the football coach, we're getting on a plane at 4 or 5 in the afternoon on a Thursday. We're going to go out there. We're going to spend all day Friday in LA, get acclimated a little bit to the time change. So by the time the game comes around on Saturday, we've already been there.
Yeah.
So I think teams do take that into account. And what I'm saying is we took that into account 30 years ago. You can't tell me they're not taking that into account today.
Lincoln Riley on the hot seat? I
don't think so.
Okay.
They've got 2 losses?
Yeah, they're 3-2, lost to Minnesota and Michigan. 2 games they could have won if they tackled better. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. It depends on how that's finishes out. If they end the season with 2 losses, they pick up a 3rd or 4th loss, then he's on the hot seat.
Think about how he leaves Oklahoma. He can say what he wants. Because we're going to talk about Oklahoma next. Oklahoma's going to have a hard time adapting to the SEC. Texas is going to have a lot easier time, right? You go to the Pac-12 thinking, okay, your brand of football is going to work. You're going to dominate the Pac-12. boom, you go to the Big Ten, and you're like, shit. Yeah, I mean,
well, that's the question. Like at the time, all of this went down. Do you think Lincoln Riley's sitting there going, "Hey, in 2 years, we're going to be in the Big Ten"?
no, I don't think he had any clue he was going to be the Big Ten. I think he thought he got in the Pac-12, he could turn that around, be a playoff team, and be inconsistent. All of a sudden, you're like, "Hey, we're going to the Big Ten." You're like, how do I do that?
The thing about
Same thing with Nebraska.
Yeah,
Nebraska, we thought we were going to dominate.
Yeah,
right. You lose that recruiting base, like they did with Nebraska. They lose all that familiarity. All of a sudden, you're not showing off the kids to Texas Tech anymore. That could have gone to Nebraska, and so they don't see him. But as far as Lincoln Riley, I think he was smart in taking this job in LA. I really do. People forget USC had no quality depth 2 years ago.
True.
I mean, that was zilch. They were not a good football team if you look at the talent level when it came to their depth. So this is why I don't think he's in trouble this year. You can't lose 4 more games. You can't lose this one. You can't lose to Nebraska. You can lose this one, but you can't lose to Nebraska and lose 2 more that you shouldn't.
But what he can't do, what he has been doing, is turning that roster over almost every single year, right? I mean, he's living. People make fun of Dion,
Right.
but he's turning that roster over a lot. That's a dangerous game to play when you try to build a program, right?
Well, and I look at it as, the 2 positions that are really, really hard to develop and build with that rapid roster turnover. It's the line, O-line and D-line. Those are developmental positions to a great degree. And I mean, you can look at Florida State. They picked up a couple portal guys a year ago. Jared Verse, I'm forgetting the interior D lineman they had. I thought he was an Oklahoma guy, actually. But both were NFL guys. Well, they're gone now, and all of a sudden that defense just absolutely crashed. You can do that, but it's just, I mean, you look at Nebraska, the thing that has kept Nebraska this season, and I'm talking about purely this season, halfway on track for an okay season, is that you do have some developmental guys. You've got Latofsky, who's been in development for the last 3 years. You've got Gunnar Gatula at left tackle, who has provided a huge amount of stability at that left tackle spot. He's a redshirt freshman, by the way.
Right.
But it's guys who've been in the system for a couple of years. And that's really all you need. But if you got a couple of guys who've been in the system for a couple of years to fill in, that makes a massive difference. If you're churning that roster over on a yearly basis and your starting lineup is changing, because you look at Colorado, they got I think it's four new starters on the offensive line this year. That's brutal. And I think I got to go double check. I think USC's the same. I think they got 4 new starters this year. That's a problem.
I'll tell you real quickly, because we're talking about the Trojans, and if Lincoln Riley should be on the chopping block, so to speak. I was just looking up the power ratings, and in my power ratings and the sportsbook power ratings are extremely close. We both have USC as the 4th best Big Ten team and 15th in the country. Well, the books have them like 15th. I've got them 17th in the country. If USC played Michigan tomorrow on a neutral field, USC's laying 5, despite the fact they lost to them. If they're playing Minnesota tomorrow on a neutral field, they're laying 10 over Minnesota. It's been a problem seriously, go back and watch some of the game film. They're not tackling. They don't have enough yet on offense cohesiveness. Miller's a good quarterback, but they're not always, you hit it on the head. It's offensive line. They're struggling to keep Miller, his jersey clean against everybody, no matter who they're playing.
Oh, he's getting brutalized.
Oh, it's crazy. He's taking some massive hits. And then the defense not tackling on top of it, it makes it tough. But I do believe, boy, it sounds like we should be laying 20 with Penn State. I do believe that USC covers this number and makes it a close game this week.
And Husker Chuck reminds us, hey, USC still has Rutgers, Nebraska, and Notre Dame left on the schedule. I mean, it's not getting any easier for the Trojans by any means. So
I just don't think he's in trouble. I really don't. I think he's got at least one more season, because the roster was so bad. The depth was just pathetic, 2 years ago upon arrival. And he's had it's not just new starters. I mean, we're talking 2 deeps were bad at USC. They were looking like 4-8, 3-9 type of depth. It was that bad. So he's had to do a lot of work. Not making excuses for him. I just think he gets at least one more year.
All right, let's go down to the SEC. Yes, this is an SEC game now. The Red River Shootout at the Cotton Bowl at the Texas State Fair Saturday at 2:30 on ABC. Texas is a 14.5 point favorite over Oklahoma. Scott, did I read? I was looking at some books today. Did this open at 8.5 and jumped up to 14.5? Did I see that correctly?
It didn't open this week, but the line was a lot closer than it is now. Obviously, under. I mean, it was single digits in the summer.
Okay.
But yeah, it's where it should be. It didn't open anywhere unless it was a bad book, and let me know if it was, because I want to bet with that book. But it's been around this number since it opened on Sunday. Looks like Quinn Ewers is going to go in this game.
Yep.
First time in a month, we'll see him on the field. I don't think it makes that big of a difference, and I mean that in a positive sense. But it's this fierce Texas defense that will go a long way towards them potentially winning a title. They give up 7 points a game. They've not yet allowed a point in the first quarter of play. So we really don't know how good this team's going to be when they have to chase somebody if they have to, because they haven't had to do so yet. It is true that they haven't faced a quality offense as of yet. But I got to ask you guys, is Oklahoma a quality offense? They don't have a quarterback. Hawkins replaces Arnold. The one good thing about Hawkins, he's taking care of the football better than Arnold did, but he's inaccurate.
And he's a freshman, correct?
What's that?
Is Hawkins a freshman?
I don't know the answer to that.
I can't recall that he's a true freshman.
I got to double check that one. I thought he was a freshman, a redshirt freshman.
The offensive numbers are horrible. 100th, 118th, 121st. That's against rushing, passing, and total yards per game, respectively. Again, the quarterback situation is bad. They were outgained by 310 yards the last 2 weeks combined. They gained 4.5 yards per play. They allowed and 2.5 yards per carry. Auburn was stopped at the Oklahoma 1. Auburn missed 2 field goals. Auburn gave up a 60-yard pick six the other way, for Oklahoma to be able to come back and win that game. The offense is just bad. It's hard for me to have a rivalry of this magnitude and say I'm going to lay 2 touchdowns and a half point on top of it. I do think the game stays under that total of 50.5. I don't think it's going to be a Red River shootout. I think it's going to be, one of those, 31-14 type of wins for Texas, which keeps it under that total. Don't see enough out of that Oklahoma offense, but I still think they can do some things on defense to maybe slow down Texas for a portion of this game that keeps it under the total.
Of course, Nebraska's not playing this week. They have the bye week. They're going to take on Indiana next week. We'll talk a lot more about the Hoosier Husker game next week. But Scott, what would be your early line? Somebody, I can't find it. I was looking for it during while you guys were talking. Somebody said Indiana 3.5 point favorite next week. That's what they were just projecting. What do you think that early line is going to be at?
I'm looking at my numbers right now on a neutral field. I would make Indiana about 2.2 points better than Nebraska on a neutral field. So you factor in Bloomington, you're probably talking about 5. Indiana being about a 5-point favorite. And
it's a tough place to play.
Especially with this coaching staff coming over and bringing a lot of good players with them. That's a scary football team right now. And I got to tell you, if it's 5.5, I don't know that I can take Nebraska plus the points in that, but we got a week to think about it. So maybe I'll change my mind by then.
So that's a tease for next week already. We're teasing up next week already. So everybody enjoy the week off. You got a lot of good football to watch, even though Nebraska's not playing. If you want to work with Scott during the season, and there's still a lot of season to go, we're only at the halfway mark. Text the word Doc Talk to the number 29022 and get the free 60 trial of premium member picks from Scott, or visit docsports.com and sign up for the free 60 on the upper left hand of the website. Scott, any parting wisdom for us? If I ask Rob, he'll go on for like 15 minutes. So I'll ask you first.
Well, just because you said that, I'm going to take us about 16 minutes.
Okay.
No, I parting wisdom is, again, bet with your head. I hope that was for Travis.
That was for Trav.
Bet with your head, not your heart. When things look too good to be true, they usually are. Trust your instinct when it comes to betting. Make those lines a week in advance. That's the best thing I can say. And go Knights, go! It's season opener tonight at T-Mobile, and I love doing this show so much that I'm going to miss my first home opener since the Golden Knights have existed.
Okay, so I got a question. My buddy Ross Peterson just texted me. He sent me a video because he's in Vegas right now. He just left the Caesars buffet. It was $170 a pop. Is it really worth $170 a pop?
What did Ross say?
He says it's the most fantastic thing he's ever had.
It's incredible.
Okay, and that's a guy who's like rail thin and doesn't eat anything anyway.
Yeah, his diet is a tapeworm. His diet is a tapeworm, all right? So
but I got to ask you, is he tight with money or is he loose with money?
No, he's here with his buddies who have so many points that it was all free tonight. That's how many points they have.
It's good to be a level A player at Caesars. It's really good because you can get a lot of good stuff for free.
I just don't. My problem is I don't think I eat enough anymore that I could go to a buffet that would be worth $170.
It's good stuff, Rob. I mean, it is good. You have a good weekend in football. You go to places like that in Vegas.
I mean, I get it. I'm just now the oysters thing intrigues me because I will destroy oysters.
I love oysters. Tell Ross, and I haven't talked to Ross in a few years, Travis, at least 8 or 9 years. Tell Ross he's got to go to China. They got to spend some time in Chinatown.
Okay, because he's not a big gambler. He's not a huge gambler, so I'll tell him to go to Chinatown.
I'll tell you two places. Palette, like as in painting the palette in Chinatown. It's a Chinese Shanghai kind of fusion with American palette. Get the Japanese whiskey to start, and then go to Shanghai Taste. You got to check out those two places. They're across the street from each other in Chinatown.
See, when I go to Vegas, and it's been many years since I've been there, I just want to go to the Sphere. That's all I want to do is go to the Sphere. It's great. Is it great?
Incredible. Been there twice now with the wife and once with the daughter, and you're just sitting there with your jaw dropping, experiencing that. I haven't been to a concert there yet, though, and that stage is so far away that you better be into all the stuff that's going on the screens around you. Otherwise, you don't know if that's the Eagles playing or if that's, leftovers from the James gang back in the 70s.
Remember at UNO, you guys, Scott, you were gone, but Rob, you remember like years ago at UNO, the University of Nebraska Omaha, they'd have like the planetarium and they'd do the Pink Floyd shows in there. Yeah, I mean, that would just be, people just go there and smoke weed all the time. That's all they did. They'd get high and listen to Pink Floyd.
So what shows have you seen there at the Sphere, Scott?
Their shows, and then I did see a concert, but it was the Grateful Dead, who's no longer really the Grateful Dead. I mean, it's all the different band members now. It's basically a tribute band. So I went because of the Sphere, and I got to tell you that the air smelled a lot fresher at that concert than when I saw Grateful Dead at Sam Boyd Stadium, the outdoor concert in Vegas 30 years prior. So it's an incredible experience. And I'm not a U2 guy, but you take in everything that's going on, and it's pretty cool. Waiting for a few more bands to get there. My buddy is actually really good friends with Joe Walsh, so I still might make it out to an Eagles show.
How long are the Eagles in residency there?
I think it's like 3 or 4 months. It's off and on. Wow. It's like maybe a week here, and then they're gone for a couple of weeks, then maybe a week again. I think it's one of those deals, and so I got to get to that show. There's a lot of good old songs, and if you get a chance, you go. You said it's going to take 15 minutes, right? I wasn't lying. So when you walk in the Sphere, the first thing you do, you got about 30 minutes before you got to get to your seat and the big show starts, when you just go to see the regular show at the Sphere. And so you walk in and they got these AI robots standing out there talking to you. I remember standing, crowd's big. You can stand literally looking at one robot. You can stand in a line in one column, and everything that AI robot says, you hear in English. 2 steps to your right, it's in Mandarin without same robot speaking. 2 steps right of that, it's in Russian. 2 steps right of that, it's German. It's crazy. And the robot's just speaking to you the same way the whole time. You can ask it questions. I asked who was going to win the Super Bowl, and it didn't give me a good answer. It didn't really have anything to say. But I also heard people talking that were next to me, a lot of out-of-towners, out-of-country people who come to tour here, obviously. And there were 2 young girls, and they were talking, and this robot said, "Oh, you're speaking Swedish. Let me change my language," and start talking in Swedish. I mean, it's incredible. So it's all the latest AI stuff that's gone into this, and it's pretty amazing.
Skynet's next.
Don't tell me you took like a self-driving car to the Sphere, because that'd just messed me up. You're like,
I've not done the self-driving thing. I've seen them around town. Every time I see a self-driving car, I see somebody in the driver's seat. So are they driving themselves or what?
Yeah, that'd freak me out a little bit, man. That's
I
all
can't handle that kind of stuff. I'm not ready.
tonight. But if you have not done so yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Doc Talk Sports. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. All the past podcasts are up there. The Doc's Diagnosis presented by Central Federal Credit Union. Of course, each Wednesday night during the football season, it's Behind the Point Spread with that man right there, Dr. Rob Zatechka, and our Vegas insider, Scott Spreitzer.
And Game Dog. Love the questions.
And Game Dog. Game Dog's he's becoming a regular now. He's becoming a regular. We'll be back next week.
Good questions.
As the Huskers get ready to take on Indiana. This has been Behind the Point Spread. We'll talk to you next week.